Melinda, and I'm the founder of Mirame Swim. We are what I call a beach to brunch swimwear line. So all of our styles kind of seamlessly slip into a woman's wardrobe. They make fabulous base pieces that you can layer with blazers. I always wear mine with like long skirts or bell bottoms. That way I can kind of go straight from the pool or the beach out to eat or whatever, because I'm always running around.
That's great. I think every woman needs pieces like that. So there's like not enough time in the world for us to get from one thing to another. So if one outfit can do it and you just throw on something on top of it, perfect. So
Yeah, it's so true. We're always rushing around. So it's nice to be able to just pack light. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Tell me a little bit about how you got into the business.
It's been like a very meandering path. I've always been the kind of person who I'm like, I don't always plan ahead. I just kind of go with the flow in life. And so I never thought I would end up in swimwear, but it was sort of a funny way that I got here. I was in college. When I was still in high school, I started reading about Buddhism somehow, and I got really into like the beat writers and everything like that. And I became really interested in Buddhism. Then I ended up going to Colorado and going to this little Buddhist college with all these hippies, and it was super fun. But it was also like, as a New Yorker, I was like, okay, this is cool, but I need to get out of here because these people are crazy. So I went on vacation to Hawaii, and then I met some kind of other hippie people because somehow I always ended up gravitating toward those folks. And they were like, this place is so cool. You should come back anytime. You could stay with us. And it was actually the Kamehameha family's land. And the people I'd met were the caretakers for the property. So they had like a tree house and a teepee and a tent on the property. So they would kind of rotate between there and the little kind of caretaker's cabin. And then during the day, they would, keep the house for the family who didn't actually live there. And so there ended up being just a bunch of hippies staying there, on and off across the time I was there. And when my vacation was over, I went back to school and I was like, you know what, I'm just not really feeling this. I finished the semester and I decided, what the heck, I might as well go back to Hawaii. So I packed like a tiny suitcase and my sewing machine because I had always loved sewing and I brought it with me everywhere. And I caught like a standby flight from LA and I just showed up and I called them because this was kind of in the beginning of cell phones. And I was like, hey, remember me? Like, I'm back and I'm here to stay. So I either would stay in the teepee or the treehouse, but I realized, man, I have to like make some money. Like, how am I gonna eat? So I went to the fabric store. I bought some Lycra and I started making bikinis and walking around and selling them on the beach. And it was fun. And people liked them. They were like, yeah, these are so cute. So I got all these different colors and styles. And that's kind of truly how I fell in love with swimwear. I loved that lifestyle. I just felt like, when people are on vacation, when they're by the sea, they're just so open, and then life can be so magical. And so I really wanted to sort of be a part of that world. And so eventually I was like, okay, I'm 19 years old. Like, if I don't leave after the amount of time I've been here, like, I'm going to end up staying here forever. And,
right.
I have to leave at some point. So I left eventually and I went back and I finished school. And I kind of bounced around and did some different things. I taught for a little while. I taught fashion, I taught preschool, but I just always had this like calling to go back to designing because I had always loved it. And then I had that experience with the swimwear. And so I eventually went back to New York and decided to enroll in FIT. But of course, like, I didn't know how to draw or anything. So it took me a couple tries. I eventually got in and I just started taking like one or two classes here and there. But I had the experience of sewing, not just from my time in Hawaii, but from my grandmother who grew up across the street from me.
But I was going to ask you, where did you originally learn how to sew?
Yes, yeah, it was from my grandmother. So my dad grew up in Germany, my mom grew up in Honduras, and both my grandmothers came here, both on their own. First, without their kids, one of them, and the other with their kids. And they didn't, my grandmother from Honduras didn't speak English. My grandmother from Germany, I don't think she did either, but they knew how to sew from, making their own clothes back home. So they got jobs in the garment district. I think when it was like on the Lower East Side, my grandmother had said. And so they were in tailored shirts and dresses. And then my great aunt was a pattern maker the German one. And so they were like a tag team. My aunt would make the patterns and my grandmother would sew the dresses. And so when she left the factory, she started dressmaking for Zsa Zsa Gabor and other sort of,
Wow.
about town in New York. And then she got into upholstery and just all these things. And she was amazing. She could sew. I wish I had something right here that she made, but she could sew anything. And so I would watch her sew all the time. And I wanted to learn because I always had sort of, strange tastes. I couldn't find things I liked at the mall. So around 8th grade, I was drawing and my grandmother came over because she lived across the street. And she said, Malinchen, which is what she used to call me, Malinchen, what are you making? And I said, oh, I have my dances coming up and I need a dress. I can't find one. And so she said, I'll make it for you. And literally 2 days later, I swear to you, 2 days later, she knocked on my door and she held up this little dress. And it was such an aha moment.
It's like a fairy godmother showing up with your Cinderella dress, kind of, right?
I couldn't, for me, it was just so magical to know that something could live in your mind and it could actually become real. Like that, for me, that was like an act of empowerment. Like I, with these hands, or in this case with her hands, could make a vision real. So that really planted the seed, but I think I knew it was going to be a hard road. And I think, I grew up with very old school parents. You have to be responsible and have a plan and a backup plan. So I think I sort of meandered off the path for a while, just not really believing in myself enough, but eventually like I couldn't run from it anymore, and it was even when I was doing other jobs, people were like, oh, you dress so nice, your outfit's so cute. And it was like, it was always there. So I couldn't turn away from it anymore. So
can't run away from who you are. So
yes, exactly.
So you were at FIT, you were taking some classes, and what's the jumping board from there to where you are now in terms of, kind of honing your craft and, getting to where you are today?
Yeah. So again, it was not like a straight path at all. I was still living in DC, which I moved to after Colorado, but I wasn't liking what I was doing. I was like, I've got to do the fashion thing. So before I had even gotten into FIT, I applied for an internship as a sample maker for this little indie label in Brooklyn. And they were just getting started. They basically had a bunch of sketches and they didn't know how to sew. So I applied for this internship and I got it. And another girl and I, who had just graduated from fashion school, we basically spent like 3 months in this basement in Williamsburg sewing their collection. And then we sewed their second collection. And so I really sort of had now something on my resume to sort of get into the fashion world. So once I left there, I applied for some other stuff. And then I was on the train. I don't know if I told you, but I was on the train and I was riding home and I was drawing. And this woman came up next to me and she said, oh, those are beautiful sketches. Are you a student? I said, yeah, I'm going to FIT. And she said, perfect. I need an intern at my sweater company. And, I'd love it if you could come in. So I was like, oh, awesome. So I did that a couple days a week. And then she ended up hiring me. So it was about 2 years I was there. So now my resume was a little more built up. And I still only had taken a few classes. And then from there, I kind of cold applied to Norma Kamali because I had always loved her. She's always like been one of my favorite designers. And I saw an ad and I was like, let me just try it. And I got the internship, and then that turned into a job, which turned into production manager for her in-house sample room and her domestic factories in Queens and New Jersey. And I kept having imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just kind of went with it. I figured it's been flowing so far. Might as well keep flowing.
Exactly. Well, I know when we talked about this last time, I think people could look at it one way and say, God, you're so lucky. But I said to you, we know it's not really luck. It's like you had these opportunities that showed themselves to you and you took them, you just knew you needed to move forward and take the next step. So I think, that's part of it, just being able and open to jump to those things that, come to you. So.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And what was so cool about all these different brands that I worked for is they were all women led. They were all indie, right? So these women owned, and the sweater company was like, and I'm sure Kamali too, multi-million dollar companies and totally owned by women. Like they never had investors. And for me, that set such a huge example. Like this is possible. Like I, as a woman, can do this, and I don't need necessarily corporate backing. I can go that route if I want, but I can do it on my own too.
Right.
And I'm so glad that those were like the stepping stones or the places where I started, because it laid such a beautiful foundation for me.
Right. You learn by example from those women-owned companies, which is amazing. And especially at that time, you know, like even it's still to think about it. I don't know what years you were working at Norma Kamali, but still, you know, that it's today is where we're starting to see a lot of female empowerment happening. So at that time, you know, still
So much.
challenging
Yeah,
women.
definitely. For sure.
So from Norma Kamali, how does one go from working for a company then to deciding to open their own, you know, brand, their own company and start their own thing?
Yeah, great question. Well, my thinking was like, she's my favorite designer, and I'm working here in America doing like what I always imagined I would do. Like, where can I go from here? Like, who else do I want to work for? And I really couldn't think of anything that would sort of top that for me. So, and I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. And I was expecting a baby when I left there. So I thought, like, I can't work Saturdays. I can't work till 7 every night. Like, I don't know. It's my first child. I have no idea what's going to happen. So I thought, well, it's now or never, Melinda. Like, you're going to do it, do it. So little me, not really knowing anything about business, just knowing how to make a product, just decided to jump in. I mean, I knew the factories, I knew the fabrications, you know, I knew the techniques, the suppliers. So I just went for it. And so I launched in 2011 during Fashion Week. I had an old boss, another entrepreneur I had worked with, who was had a showroom and was planning an event. So we launched, and it was really fun. Macy's came, a bunch of stores came. They loved the collection. It was kind of muted pastels and nudes. It was called Natives. It was all about being a New Yorker and sort of blending all these cultures and, like, you know, streetwear and high fashion sort of together, and how we just, it tells the story of who we are, this combination of things, right? And so that was so fun. So I got, you know, some orders that season, and I figured, okay, my first season, I got some orders, like that's a good sign. So then I just kept going. I just kept at it. You know, it's been up and down. I mean, I've kind of stopped and started just because my family's grown. So I sometimes will take some time off. But I mean, I think that that's the beauty. Like I know the lifestyle that I want to have, and I've sort of been able to build the brand around that rather than put pressure to follow a certain trajectory created by somebody else.
Right.
Which, you know, it's been a work in progress getting to that point, but I'm certainly here now. And yeah, there was a lot to learn on the business side. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Coming at it from a design side, you know, learning the business part of it is a whole other and marketing, all of that becomes a whole different
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of learning curves there for you.
Yeah, but you know, New York has so many great programs. You know, FIT has a beautiful one where they train you on business. They call it a mini MBA. It's like a summer long program. So I participated in that, which was incredible because it really helped me to write my business plan and, you know, kind of do things right, plan ahead. Macy's also had an awesome program that I did. Even like the local women's business center where I live had a wonderful entrepreneur program. So yeah, there's a lot of helpful hands when you really take a look. And I love that women are kind of leading the charge here with all of this now, and we're having our moment, and absolutely. I hope that it really continues to build.
One last thing I did want to ask you, you know, as we kind of entered lockdown in the pandemic, I know a lot of businesses were challenged by lack of business or not knowing what was going to happen. How did it affect your business, and where do you see yourself today from when that happened?
Sure. Well, actually, I was anticipating things would not be so great during the pandemic, but I actually found the reverse. Surprisingly, we had our best year ever. I found that a lot of sort of people that I've met along my journey over the last 10 years kind of came out of the woodwork. to support, say, hey, like, how are you doing? How can we help? I had people like donate to the brand. I had people buy like swimsuits for their mother, their sister, their friends. I had new customers find me and say, listen, I know like this pandemic has hit women especially hard. Like, we want to support your brand. Your suits are beautiful. So like new customers, older customers, friends. It was a really a beautiful surprise. And so I'm hopeful that sort of the silver lining of all this, one of the silver linings is that we have this renewed interest in supporting small business and supporting women-owned businesses, because I think that we've learned, hopefully, to like just care more for one another and to think about, our dollar and how we spend it and who that money is going to and what that means for them. Um, because yeah, we're all in this together.